I'm Nicole.
And welcome to the Scoop.
All right.
Today we're going to look at our shirts, growth mindset. So I asked some people what growth mindset was. What's growth mindset to you?
Growth mindset is engaging in curiosity, openness to learning new things, growing as an individual. Yeah.
What's growth mindset to you, Bree?
Growth mindset to me is being open to and constantly striving to learn and improve both professionally and personally.
Working with the clients, it's amazing seeing the growth, being a part of that growth, being able to see them go from, not having the skills that they need, being able to, see them get up to the point where they're living their best life and they're, able to use all of the skills that we teach.
I love to see growth in the staff as well. I love to see growth in the supervisors from when they're first starting as interns to as they continue and have their staff and do staff management. And then also to be able to see the growth just within the clients and their parents of like seeing the progress that we're doing at the clinic and that is generalized and taken home as well.
Yeah. So growth mindset to me, is always knowing you can work on yourself or work on what you're doing or learning from anyone and everyone. Some people that I asked, some were serious and some were not, like my husband. He looked at my shirt this morning and started reading my shirt. And I thought that was great. And then he's like, and then I'm like, you read my shirt. And then other people, it was very interesting because it was very much, learning for sure. But that looked a little bit different for everybody, of course, which is what growth mindset is to me, it's different for everybody. So I also kind of Googled growth mindset. And so what's the opposite, which it said fixed mindset. So I thought it was interesting to get a definition, which I don't even have it up here. This is something different. So I'm going to Google that real quick because it was interesting because when I read fixed mindset, I also really liked fixed mindset because it talked about taking people's strengths and really utilizing them in a way that helps the team, which we do very well, I think. I think we really look for people to use their strengths. So I thought that was interesting. Let me pull this up. So I liked both, but I also think with fixed mind, the same thing's coming up, is that with fixed mindset, when you take a strength, for example, and so let's say somebody's really good with numbers, we take that and we use that so they're motivated, successful, all the things, and then also we work on those other pieces too, right? Because everybody should be moving, even if it's their strength, but we would still be moving forward and learning, right?
Yeah.
And we would learn from them, I would say too. I've learned a lot from people that are the opposite of me and have a different skill set than me. I find myself and others, I see some of those things coming out in some of the language or some of whatever that is of the more black and white, because we're more not black and white. So I see us even using some of that language. What would you say about that? As far as what you learn, where you struggle, what would you say about that? And how do you learn?
Yeah, I think that people that are the opposite of me kind of balance out and make really good teams because each brings their own strength that makes kind of united team where everybody can get to a common goal because maybe this person has more abstract thinking, this person has more concrete or analytical thinking. I think that me personally, I'm very much an out of the box thinker. And so I do need people that are maybe more detail oriented or maybe more analytical in the sense of they want a written out process or processy, more of that kind of black and white thinking. And I think that balances out some of my skills and traits that I bring to the team.
For sure. Does it get frustrating too when you're with somebody that's opposite of you or more analytical or black and white? Does that get frustrating for you?
I think that maybe in the beginning it did. I don't think so much anymore because I've been very open-minded to that. So I've been really flexible, and I know through experience how much that like helps me and contributes to my growth. So I don't think I'm as like frustrated with that anymore.
Do you think it's frustrating for them with people that think more outside the box and they're going to pull them more into like we've got to pick this or that, or for example, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially people that maybe have more of like a fixed mindset where they're not as like growth mindset oriented as far as like, okay, how can I learn from this person? That might play a part in that like frustration, like wanting everyone to be the way that they are, and not being as like flexible and as accepting of how other people can help you or grow you. Yeah, I could see it coming from that lens.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been frustrated at times when there's a rule or a policy or a something, that is the way that it is, and this is what we're going back to. Okay, nope, this is the policy. And then I'm like, but wait a minute, like I get frustrated for sure. But I also know the value of coming back to that, the integrity, that piece. So I really value those people because I'm definitely not as gray as I used to be. There's a lot of things that I like to come back to because I think you've said this a million times. Like I don't want to repeat myself. And that's something that when I know we have something, I may not remember what it is. I might have to go like, what was that again? Because we talk about a lot of stuff when you're talking about the whole company is, so I like that. I value that and I respect that. I do get frustrated though, I think too, when something doesn't fit and we have to make a decision that maybe is outside the box, and then maybe make a policy or a rule or whatever, some sort of, which is good. We need to do that. But I think that's, yeah. So that I think there's kind of both, but I could definitely see somebody when I think of people that even like would have OCD or something where they're like, this is the way that it is. I see how frustrating I am for them.
Yeah.
Because they're like, that's not what it is, and I remember, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I think that plays into growth mindset versus fixed. And let's see here. So one of the reasons why we're doing this is growth mindset is one of Sonnenberg's values. And I think this is a good tool because we have seen differences in how someone might describe growth mindset or implement, or if there's a consequence, or where we say to somebody, okay, we want growth mindset out of this. How do we do that? And then our definitions sometimes look very different. So I think it's valuable to talk about it. And how do we continue to have a culture that embraces growth mindset, and what does that look like? Because it is different for everybody. It looks a little bit different. So I just looked up some stuff because there is some courses on growth mindset versus fixed. So I was looking up some different things just to kind of go off of to see what we thought. So I think a lot of this is what we constantly talk about.
Yeah.
So active listening, what does that mean? What is active listening? What does that look like? That's under growth mindset. Is how do you grow if you're not actively listening and present with another person or people or group? So that would definitely be growth mindset because you're growing from another person or the environment. Emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence for you with that?
I think, and I think everyone would probably answer this differently, but emotional intelligence to me is that you can identify like what your own kind of triggers and like signals are, and be able to state like how you are feeling in different moments, or know that if X were to happen, I would feel this emotion, and the expression of how you're feeling.
Yeah, it was interesting. I'm a little obsessed with elephants right now. I don't know why, and little baby elephants.
Yeah.
Because they're so one of the smartest animals, I guess. And I was watching this video and they were talking about how they have such high emotional intelligence. And one of the videos they were showing was an elephant with a whole bunch of hyenas attacking all of the elephants. Or I don't know if they were attacking, it looked like they were attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another one where they were trying to get through, but they were, they're huge. And there was this big, massive, I forget what they call them, with the tusks and whatever, the male one. And they were stepping and then they would go like this and wait for them to move. And then they would wait. And just the awareness, like I'm reading here, adaptability, lifelong learning, problem solving. That would be all of that, right? Because this elephant was like, I'm going to crush you. I can't even see you. You're underneath me where they really can't see because they can't see right under. So that was interesting to me of like how I look at emotional intelligence too, is the adaptability, the problem solving, and like lifelong learning. Like really it is lifelong learning. You're always learning. You can learn from anyone, anything really. So I thought that was interesting. And then conflict management. So what does that mean? Conflict management. How would you?
Well, so there's a book that I recently read that we're reading as leadership, and they talk about like what is healthy conflict. And so
that's why you've been using that word.
Yes. And it's meant a lot to me because it's kind of like this conflict management piece a little bit, where it's good to have conflict, because if you have conflict, then that means people are talking. And when people are talking, that's good. And everybody can kind of like be heard and get everything that they want to say out. And even though a decision needs to be made at the end of the day, that that decision might not be what you wanted it to be, but if you are heard and if you are talking and opening up about any like disagreements that you may have, whatever decision is made at the end of the day, you're probably more likely going to be okay with it, because you at least got to bring to the table what your concerns were. So that like being heard piece. I
like that,
because I think when people are like silence is deadly kind of thing.
For sure. For sure. I think silence says more than anything. When somebody is absent or not talking, for sure.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that healthy conflict. So then the opposite would be unhealthy conflict. So what does that look like then? Is that the silence you're talking about, or what is unhealthy then, would you say?
Yeah, that's the silence, or it's labeling people as certain things rather than the work. So I can say, hey, like your work isn't up to a certain quality, or I could say you're not up to a certain quality. And that's very different. So how you like present conflict is different. So you want to focus on the tangible pieces versus like the individual person.
Oh, I like
when
that.
You bring it up.
I can see how that would be.
Yeah, like it's the difference between saying, hey, like you're dumb versus like this work doesn't make sense.
It's like almost attacking somebody's character.
Right.
Is what you're saying, right? Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that a lot. Okay. And then it has critical thinking and willingness to learn, decision making, communication. Communication is another value of ours. So I think that's every value is, once you are silent or not communicating, that's not good. So I like that. Resilience, stress management, all of that was kind of something that they really focused on. Interpersonal communications, that's another one too. So what does that mean, interpersonal communication, to you?
I would say having conversations like with others and providing maybe that goes into like feedback a little bit too, but providing that in a way that the other person has the ability to respond to that. So everyone kind of communicates differently. So to me, I think it's about identifying different ways of communication, and using that to form interpersonal relationships, as well.
Okay.
So identifying, like what people's likes and dislikes are, and not that you can accommodate that every single time, but having some openness to that.
So what do you do when two people don't like each other?
Yeah, I mean, when two people don't like each other, I think it's good to figure out like the why. And usually what I found is that it's like a lack of communication, or it's a lack of understanding, from both parties. And so figuring out why, and then maybe coming together or finding like, I'm not asking everyone to be like best friends, but
Right.
to have a professional working relationship means that there needs to be communication. And how do we do that like effectively?
Right.
And some of that takes practice. Some of it takes like some role play separately before you can enter into a conversation. It just kind of depends.
Yeah. I think one thing that, or the main thing that I'm hearing a lot lately is just that direct communication too, and not being so fluffy and being more, not rude. That's not what I mean by that, but like more just direct. So instead of beating around the bush and the person not really getting what you're asking or what you're trying to communicate, of just saying it like, this is this is my intent. This is my purpose of talking about this.
Yeah.
Because there's so many times, I would say, for me, I can speak from me, and what I've objectively, seen is that my intent and maybe your intent, if we're coming to a conversation and your end result is could be different than mine. Yeah. So we're talking about two different things, even though we're using the same language, because maybe I'm looking at it from a financial standpoint and you're looking from it from a clinical standpoint, and our outcomes or what we're looking for could be different. So we've got to make sure that we're communicating that, right? What's our intent of this? We talk a lot about that. So we have client services, we have, the financial piece of it, the clinical piece of that, and then PNC. So we've got all these different areas that we're making a decision off of. We've got to make sure, and what I'm hearing you say is that each department has been heard, for example. So when we come to that end result, that it makes sense, because otherwise we have to go back and then go, okay, we totally forgot about like orientation, so like it makes sense from these couple of areas, but it doesn't make sense because it won't work for orientation, or that won't work. Christina will say this too. I can't, what do you want? How do you want me to do that? Or Melissa, that totally won't work because I can't do X, Y, and Z. It's great for you guys, but how do we track that? How do we actually, right? So like, I hear a lot about that too. So again, communication, and then me learning, or whoever's learning, I didn't know that. I don't know this department. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know that code. I don't know how to do that in Central Reach. So that makes sense. So can you show me? So those kind of things I think are really important too. So what do you think about with we kind of talked a little bit about this, but the fixed mindset. I was going to pull that up on my phone. Mindset, because I can't get it on here for some reason. Okay. So the downside of a fixed mindset, which is why we picked the other one, growth mindset, is failure is the limit of my abilities. I'm either good at it or I'm not. My abilities are unchanging. I can either do it or I can't. I don't like to be challenged. My potential is predetermined. When I'm frustrated, I give up. Feedback and criticism are personal. He talked a lot about that, keeping those separate.
Yeah.
I stick to what I know. So that would be a fixed mindset. And we do hear that from people like, that's not I don't know how to do that. I'm not good at that. I don't want to do that. Right? I mean, there's times I've even said, I'm not good with numbers. That's not really where I want to go with this. Could you do it? But I have to obviously work with numbers too. But if somebody else is better at it, like we use James a lot with certain things of like, can you run these numbers for us? This is kind of the goal. So that's where I mean by like, it's a growth mindset, but we do have our areas of more motivation or specialty, or just that we're better in, I guess I would say. So that's where I liked some of like utilizing that. Now, growth mindset, failure is an opportunity to grow. Oh, that is, I could literally tattoo that on my forehead. I think mistakes are awesome. Not when you make the same thing 10,000 times.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, that's hard.
But I mean, if you try something and you fail, I'm like, okay, so that didn't work. But what did we learn from that? And then you go to the next thing, and that might work or not work, depending on what we do. But I love that. I love like, okay, now we know that didn't work. Or sometimes, I don't know how you feel about this, but like something will come that will spark something from that mistake. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, we have such an opportunity in that area, or we could use that over here, or whatever. Like that's how I look at it. Although other people, I think with a fixed mindset would be like, we failed, it's over. We just can't, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why you have a lot of entrepreneurs that stop because they try something and they fail and they're like, oh, that didn't work. Or you have entrepreneurs that have failed 10 times and now they've succeeded in this area because they keep going. So I think that's really, really important too. What else is on here? I can learn to do anything I want. That can be also dangerous. Challenges help me to grow. My effort and attitude determine my abilities. Feedback is constructive. I am inspired by the success of others. I think that's very true. And I like to try new things. And sometimes that can be at a detriment too.
Yeah.
Because that's where we need our people that are like, hold on, we don't have this yet. So now it's falling through the cracks because you're moving on, but you don't have this as a solid foundation. So that's where I really respect that for sure. Okay, let's see here. That's interesting. So they also show, I don't know, Carmen, maybe we can add this. I can send this to you. Fixed mindset versus growth mindset. There's some visuals that just shows the brain and how it looks differently. Let's see here. Yeah, it just talks a lot about growth mindset, stepping out of your comfort zone. I know we talk a lot about that of if you're comfortable, you're probably not growing. I do think it's good to be comfortable for a little bit, like make sure you have your skills and that they're solid enough that you're going to retain them. Because if you move too fast, sometimes too, you have them and then you lose them and you kind of go back to like that. So I think there's a balance, but you definitely, if you're uncomfortable, you're most likely growing. Let's see. Focus on the process, not the end result. Oh, that's interesting. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that that's something that I've had to grow in, because I think that as a behavior analyst, we're very results driven, like we're very data driven. However, there is like a process to get to those end results, and that comes with our like interventions and what we're teaching and things like that. And I think you just have to like enjoy that, because I think we want to get to like, okay, what's the solution? What's the result? And if you're enjoying the process, then maybe you're more open-minded. Maybe you're getting other people's feedback before maybe you're looking at needs of like each department or each person before coming to that solution.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might allow
That's
more
interesting.
time.
I like that. That's what I'm trying to kind of see, because I think if you want it to end and you want to get to like the conclusion, then did you really enjoy it, or are you chasing that? Like, I don't want to say that high, but like that high to get there of like, I want it to end so I can start the next thing. And maybe that's why we move too fast sometimes, because we're trying to chase the 1 + 1 is 2 and be done and go on to the next thing, instead of going like, this is cool, look what we're doing. Like, okay, we're missing a few things, what can we do? So maybe that's the part that you're talking about, is we're missing this part. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
What's your
When you move
feedback?
too fast, I think that you miss pieces, and then that's where like a lot of like maybe change comes in, because then you're having to fix it after you already have a solution because you didn't maybe enjoy the process and get everyone's feedback, make sure that it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think we've done better at like slowing down a little bit, but
so I think that's a kind of a cool, it almost could be a slogan. Like focus on the process, not the end results. I kind of like that. Be inspired by others' success. I think that's can be hard sometimes too, because you want to be able to, well, I think that's the being heard part too, is that we're all feeling like we're a piece of the whole. And that's part of our what we say for what is that? Which one is that for? Is that our what do you call that? I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, we say it's a piece of the whole. We're all a piece of the whole. So that is, maybe that's part of the growth mindset that we have in there. We have some definitions.
Yeah.
It might be a piece of the whole. I think we're really sometimes too good at that. The view challenges opportunities. Sometimes I'm like, and sometimes it's exhausting because you're like, oh, come on, that had to have worked, but it sometimes doesn't. Believe that talent is ever improving. Yeah. And then, okay, so if you're thinking about focusing on others too and being a piece, then sometimes fixed would be just focusing on improving yourself. So this goes to you versus us, or me versus us, or I versus us. So like the team, there's no I in team, like that kind of thing. And I think that's been the hardest, right?
Yeah.
Like years of, okay, that's great that you're doing that. And I know that's frustrating because this person, how do we pull them in? Because they've done research on that too, where do you remember the research, that book we were reading a couple of years ago? And it was about the teams of, you take, and one person in the team does really, really well. And then you have a team that everybody's doing their piece, and which team does better. Do you remember that book?
Yeah. Was that pro-social?
I think it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the end result was that the team where somebody is doing really well and accelerates the rest of the people are like,
they kind of give up because they're kind of like, all right, well, like you could just do it yourself.
Right. Like, I'm just going to
but that one person can't do everything.
Right.
So then eventually it falls apart regardless.
So it was interesting because I think that book was very dry to read, and I didn't read the whole thing, but pieces of it were really interesting because it showed how you have groups and how it actually is worse. That if you pair somebody, I believe it was with overachiever, we'll just say it that way, and someone that is really struggling, and you put them together, what that actually does, right?
I think it was that book. Yeah.
And that it actually falls apart because you think that person's gonna pull them up, and actually they don't. It actually separates them more. So there's lots of research to support that too, as far as the teams. So that's one thing that Nicole and I and some other teammates, leadership, we're reading books and reading some chapters and then talking about it. That's our goal, is to just see what we can do. I don't know if I have the book with me. So one of the books is the 5 dysfunctions of a team. This is one that we're looking at right now. And this is where you had the healthy conflicts. Is there anything that you think is helpful to talk about in this book? I mean, we're just getting started as a team with it, but they divvy it up into team, different people, and talk about different people and kind of the things that they do or not do. It's super interesting to look at it. So did you identify with one of those team players at all? Like the people that they described?
Yeah, I mean, I just like the book overall because they took like characters and made characters like each part of the team, which it made it a really nice read because you could kind of relate to different people. I don't know if I related to like one person like specifically, but I definitely related to like being a leader of a team and seeing those different pieces kind of like play out. And so I really liked how the book did that. Like they didn't just talk about like, here's the 5 dysfunctions. They talked about how that looks, and gave some really great examples. It was really interesting to see like who didn't work out on the team, and I think that said a lot.
I'm not that far, so don't tell me.
Yeah. I think that said a lot though, because you can kind of read it and identify like, okay, these are some characteristics of people like on our teams too, and how they can like work together. And everyone was different. Like everyone was a different part, like had different departments. This was like a corporation, right? But everyone was in a very different department. They found out that they had the same outcomes, although each person got it differently. They came to like a common.
Oh, I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, they came to kind of like a common ground. Like, okay, we're all going to work on this like KPI, but we all contribute differently to that. And they all had to like be like open with one another and communicate with one another. And at first they were like very silent. And and they didn't always share, like they would be thinking something in a meeting and not share it. And then a decision would be made.
Oh, that's okay. So that's the silent.
That's the silent like piece of it. And then they're like, oh, well, that doesn't like contribute to what I'm doing, or they would hold like some sort of resentment towards another team member. And then like some team members from different departments, like certain departments were doing well, but the company was not.
Oh, interesting.
So then they had to figure out like, okay, it's great that like marketing is doing well, but it's not affecting the company.
Right.
So what's going on there?
Right.
Or the managers were like, had really good like staff on their teams, and they were really close to their staff, but almost like too close where the staff weren't producing. So they kind of like got into like the department heads met, and then it had to like, they talked a little bit about how it had to like trickle down to other staff members and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not as far as you. Are you finished?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not.
It's good. Yeah.
It is an easy read. I would agree. And I found myself putting characters in the company into those positions are real people. I'm like, oh, I mean, it wasn't perfect. But I could definitely see certain things. So I'm kind of curious how that will play out. You obviously just said some of it, but which is why this book came highly recommended from some other people, execs in other ABA companies. They really recommended this one along with some other ones. So this is the one that they said this would be good based off of what like my need was looking for. So I thought that was really cool. So I'm excited to see that and to see how, and really what's sticking out to me is the character versus the work, like your character, and separating those, because then it becomes, and I've heard that so many times, like, I'm honest, and I'm like, well, I'm not saying you're not honest, and then they're like, that's the difference, right? Because it's a character versus the work isn't whatever, right? Whatever it is that you're talking about with the work versus you're not doing this, so you're dishonest, or I'm not saying I said that, but like that would be an example of, right? Yeah. Which again, if somebody's character or their value is honesty, and they think that their honesty is being questioned, that's not good. Because then they shut down. Why would they continue to want to be productive or do whatever it is that they're doing? So I think that's really, it's very interesting to see it like that. But that's growth mindset, because I'm just so curious, and I really want to learn of how to continue to be a leader that people want to come to, and why do people want to be here? I mean, that's the beginning and the end of like, why do you want to do this hard work? It's challenging. We have challenges every day, families, staff, clinical, financial. I mean, you name it. We have sometimes multiple times a day of many challenging things. So why do you want to do this? important, right? Is that communication and that growth of like, how do I continue to be curious and take in feedback, and apply it.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else? That was a lot in one value. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so.
What is that? Is that yours?
Yeah, I don't know how to turn it off. I've
Oh.
tried so many times.
Oh, there is one more that I want to talk about, actually. So can't accept failures or mistakes. We talked a little bit about that, but that is something I hear too from people that have more of a fixed mindset or black and white, is like, if it didn't go 1 + 1 is 2, it's like I failed. And that, I know we've talked a little bit about that, but I've actually seen that with some of our more type A personalities, of like, I failed that. And that's something too I want to continue to work through, because okay, of course I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, yeah, that didn't work, because like, now we know not to do that. Now we're going to go this way. And I think that that's definitely something that I see. Like, the more that I talk about it, the more I think that more of the people that are making like are more black and white, it's got to be so much more difficult. Because how do you be more flexible in those and feel like it's not your character? Because that also is what I would think somebody would do to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my character versus that's my work.
Right.
Work doesn't always work.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I think I just had an aha moment of like, when somebody feels that about themselves, to look at it like that. This is your work. This isn't your character. This is your work. And sometimes it doesn't pan out.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have to pivot.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a barrier there. So now we're going to do this. That just kind of made me think of something, not always about the other person, but about yourself too. Because I think that some people are really hard on themselves.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, with that said, that was our value of growth mindset. We're going to cover some other stuff also, other values. We have several others that we'd like to go over. So stay tuned to the future of that. And then we're going to have some guests on in the future too. So thank you so much. Bye.